Well, good morning from sunny Victoria, British Columbia. My name is Cam Barnard. I'm a product manager here at Latitude Geographics, and it is my privilege to have half an hour with you to tell you all about how to get work done with Cityworks and Geocortex. Now, I recognize that some of you on this call may be very familiar with Cityworks. Some of you may be new to Cityworks. Similarly, some of you may be very familiar with Geocortex or maybe new to Geocortex. So I'm going to spend just a couple of slides orienting you to these two products, and then we will get started with the rest of our webinar. So first of all, what is Cityworks? Cityworks is a market-leading GIS-centric enterprise asset management system. What does that mean? Well, this is my own summary of what Cityworks does. There's so much that they do, it's difficult to pack it into just a few words, but it's really twofold. On the one side, it's operational and logistical, helping you manage your service requests, your work orders, your inspections, set up your crews, do your dispatches, make sure that the work is flowing, being properly approved, quality checked, etc. And then on the other hand, it's also tracking your equipment and your material and your labor costs. And as I was out speaking with customers and asking them questions about what they found valuable in Cityworks, what kept coming back was, once you get this rolling and you have this information, Cityworks provides some great tools for assessing asset condition over time, predicting when assets need to be replaced or repaired, and then allowing you to do condition scoring, business unit cost reporting breakdowns, and a huge help in budgeting and being able to show roll-ups of actual costs for asset management. So in one slide, that is Cityworks. What is Geocortex Essentials? Again, in one slide, we are a market-leading solution for building web GIS applications, and we're all about simplifying complex interactions and letting end users accomplish their business objectives. We really focus on two areas. First of all, the usability, clarity, and accessibility for our end users. And then on the other side of it, for those who are actually building these applications, making it easier for them to build those applications, maintain them, ensuring that technology is future-proofed over time. From our point of view, building a web GIS application is hard, but maintaining a bunch of them for a long period of time can be very, very challenging. So in summary there, you take Cityworks, an Esri Platinum partner, and Geocortex, also an Esri Platinum partner, and the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And if you didn't know where that quote was from, you now know where it's from. Now, I thought we would start with a couple of quick demonstrations. I'm going to walk you through the extension itself, how some of this is built, but I always find it helpful personally to begin with a couple of actual examples. So let me start there. Don't need that or that, but we do need this. So this is a small application that I built yesterday afternoon. It took me a couple of hours all told to do the configuration and organization of it. And what this is an example of a dedicated app. So we have someone out in the field who has just shown up on a work site for doing a work order on a fire hydrant. And they launch their app. And when they launch their app, most of it is going to be automated. The app is going to automatically determine their location, pan and zoom the map to that location, and begin executing a workflow. So that all happened without me needing to do anything. And this is all about an asset work order history. And you can see as I begin to move my finger around on this mobile app, I have one water hydrant that is very close to where I'm currently standing. This is a spatial application, and that is the one that appears to have the work order attached to it. Now, when I showed up on site today, it just didn't look quite right, and I wanted more information about the history of this particular asset. So let's go ahead and select that asset. And it is now going to pull for me a list, a chronological list of all the work that's been done on that asset. So these are work orders coming from the Cityworks system. I'm going to start with the oldest, which was a repair. And I'm going to have a quick read of the summary, and I understand from this that a gasket was replaced, but there was maybe not a great connection. It might need future replacement. Well, that's interesting. And then as I continue to dig through work orders and summaries, I see that there was a flush completed on this hydrant. Maybe that was just a couple of weeks ago. And now I'm starting to see the picture. That imperfect connection showed itself again after the flush was complete, and I now have an outstanding repair order that I'm supposed to fulfill today. So based on a simple app like this, I can make better decisions in the field about whether I should just repair this hydrant or whether maybe I should call dispatch and we should consider replacing it as it's just going to happen again. So this is an example of a very targeted, very easy to use application that is backed by Geocortex and the Cityworks API. As you've seen me use this application, we're querying spatial assets. We're talking to the Cityworks API and asking it for work orders for a particular asset ID, but that all happens behind the scenes without the end user needing to understand the complexity. So that's my first simple example. Here's my second simple example. For this example, we are going to be doing some work. Again, I'll use a fire hydrant just as an example. And we're being dispatched out to a work order over here. And as we're driving along this road, we drive past this particular hydrant and we notice that it's leaking. Now, many cities and municipalities have a rule that says if you're driving past and you see something obvious that needs to be repaired right away and you have the skills to do it, you should stop and fix it. But the traditional problem with that is there's no work order backing it, and therefore it's very challenging to ensure that that time, even though it was important work, is properly tracked for future budgeting, asset history, and the like. So there is no work order currently on this fire hydrant at all. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a different task called fast tracking a work order. This is something that we did based on feedback from customers. You see I'm logging in with my Cityworks authentication credentials. If I was in the field on a mobile device, it would work very similarly to that first application you saw. It would simply detect my location, but because I'm doing this one on a desktop, I will click and show you where I'm standing on the map. Based on that, once again, it's going to query all the assets around me spatially. It's going to show me a list of those assets sorted by distance. And this is the hydrant. Now, I would have had no idea what the asset ID of that hydrant was because I was just driving past it and happened to see it leaking. But now I know that that is in fact the hydrant and I can properly link it to my work order. The next thing that I need to do is just quickly select a work order template. Again, this is talking to the Cityworks API behind the scenes, and I'm going to do a repair on this particular hydrant to stop it from leaking. And now I have access, of course, to comments, drive-by, leak fix. Let's go ahead and log a little bit of labor against this particular work order because labor is obviously something that's important. Maybe it took me 3/4 an hour to fix. And now at this moment in time, there's still no work order in Cityworks, but as I click this finish button, behind the scenes, Geocortex, talking with the Cityworks platform and the API, is going to create a new work order, properly link the asset to it, update it with my comment, and update it with the labor. So this is the only time I'm going to head to Cityworks today, but let's go ahead and launch that, just so you can see the work that we just completed in the context of the Cityworks system. So here is the work order. You can see from my date and time that it was literally created and closed all within a few seconds of each other. Our comment is there. And in fact, if I go to my labor screen, you can see that the labor has been logged as well. Now, I know that was quick. You will, of course, have the opportunity to watch those again when you get to the recording, but I thought it important to start you off with just a couple of compelling examples of the kinds of applications that you can build. So now I want to dive into what is this Cityworks extension that you just saw 2 examples of. Well, in short, it's everything you need to build use-targeted, Cityworks connected WebGIS applications. In one sense, it's a really good set of tools for building your own applications that model your own business processes. Now, how do we do that? We do that by creating and delivering a whole series of building blocks. These are workflow activities for the Geocortex workflow technology, which again, I will show you in a few moments a little bit more on workflow. So these are some of the activities that are available to you. And what we do with those activities is we chain them together in our visual tool for building workflows, and then we plug them into existing WebGIS applications. Now, we didn't just want to give you the building blocks, so we've also given you several out-of-the-box workflows that are ready for immediate use. These workflows were the most common use cases that I heard when I was out talking with my customers, who many of them had Cityworks and Geocortex, and they were telling me about the kinds of things they were needing to build and to do. So asset history, you saw an example of that already, creating a new service request, investigating a service request in the field. Many service requests are just, they come in, maybe it's a request for a pothole fix, it gets assigned to a crew, the crew gets dispatched, the pothole gets patched, and away you go. But there's other types of service requests that actually need field investigation. Maybe someone is complaining about traffic moving too fast past a designated playground area. Someone's going to have to go out, look at signage, look at the speed limit, determine if changes are required, and then make a decision to either cancel or create a linked work order from that. Completing inspections is another capability that we've given you out of the box in a workflow. And then several things around work orders, creating new work orders, fast tracking a work order, which you saw the example of, just logging work for a work order while you're out in the field. And this includes equipment, labor, materials, tasks, custom fields, just about anything you can do on a work order. And then closing a work order, or in some cases for some municipalities, that's more setting it to a state where someone internally needs to now look at it, and then it will get closed off. So all those workflows are available to you out of the box with this extension. We also supply documentation. These are the most common questions we get. How do I get my service requests, my work orders, my inspections on top of the Geocortex map? So we've got some instructions on how to do that. We've got some instructions on how to update your workflows. There are a number of fields associated with, say, a work order in Cityworks, and you can add those fields to your workflow. We obviously encourage you to keep your interfaces clean and simple and easy to use, but nevertheless, sometimes you need to add some fields. So we've got instructions on that. Part of Geocortex Essentials is also an entire web-based reporting unit or module. And we've got a good example that shows you how to build a work order report inside the Geocortex reporting system that's pulling information from the Cityworks system. So I've shown you a small example here on this screen. You've got a map, you've got some information that's been reverse geocoded and assets, and then you've got information that's come directly from the Cityworks system, including that photograph, incidentally, which came directly off the work order. So these examples are also included to get you started and get you moving in the right direction. Now, I've spoken several times now about Geocortex workflow. So what is Geocortex workflow? Because the Cityworks extension for Geocortex Essentials is really built on top of this Geocortex workflow technology. Well, Geocortex workflow is all about transforming complex business processes into simple end user interactions. That is the tightest summary I can give you. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to start with a short demonstration of workflow. I'm doing this because for me, it's really important, if you've taken the time to join me today, that you walk away from this understanding that all these apps and workflows and examples that I've shown you, they're all configured. They're not coded. And part of the brand promise of Geocortex is to allow you to build the equivalent of a custom application in terms of really following your organization's business processes, but without the cost of a custom application. And so workflow is one of the ways that we do that. So let's go ahead and dive into a very brief workflow demo. Now, again, this is short. We've only got 30 minutes together. What I want to do is I want to show you an example from logging work for work orders. So here we are in that same demonstration application we were in earlier, and I'm going to work over here on this particular work order. Now, you'll note that when I ran this workflow, it prompted me for my location. I clicked on the map. It gave me this little message that says geometry captured and is requiring me to click a button to continue. We're going to change the way that works together right now. And then once I click continue, the next thing I get is a list of nearby work orders. In this case, there's only one. Clearly, that's the one I want. And then we're going to come to this screen here, which is currently asking me for things like tasks associated with my work order or equipment. And again, all these lists are being pulled dynamically from Cityworks on the fly. So equipment, labor, materials, coming from the storerooms that I've designated if I'm using storeroom. These are all coming live from the Cityworks platform and the API. That includes things like custom fields. So all these are available to me, including attaching photos. But what we're going to do is we're going to add a field to this form. All right, so not making us click the button and adding a field. So let's go ahead and make those two changes. To do that, I'm going to log into my own machine. And here we are in what is called Workflow Designer. Now, this is the workflow that is controlling that screen that lets me do employees and photos and custom fields and the like. And what we're going to do is pretty straightforward. We're going to modify this form because all the forms and the user interface elements are all created here. And we're going to add a checkbox. We're going to bring that up so that it sits right below our comments area. And in this case, we've got a business requirement to start understanding which of our work orders in the field are reactive. So this is one of the common Cityworks fields. We're going to ask the question, is this reactive? Now, down below, you'll see I've actually got a live preview of what that form is going to look like. I'm going to go ahead and save that one. Again, we're going through this very quickly. We have a dedicated workflow activity for helping the end user capture geometries, points, lines, polygons, and the like. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. And all I'm going to do here is change a couple of properties. I'm going to change the auto submit to true. And the captured message, which was that little checkbox, I'm going to change that to false. So I'm going to make those two simple changes to this particular property. And again, I'm going to save that as well. Now, without reloading this application or making any further changes, one of the powers of Geocortex workflow is that once I push those changes out, they're live to all my users in the field. So I'm going to go ahead and run that same workflow again, but now it's going to behave differently. So the first thing that we're going to notice is the moment I click on this map, it's going to move to the next step of the workflow. I'm removing work from my user. They didn't have to click a button. I now want to select that particular hydrant, and you can see I now have a new form control. So again, as you're seeing examples that I've done earlier today or in the future, it's so important to realize you're doing this via configuration inside Geocortex workflow. So that is a very short demo of Geocortex workflow, but hopefully it shows you the power of being able to change the user's experience. So now I want to walk you through 2 or 3 quick examples of Geocortex workflow in the context of Cityworks. So one of the things that we talk about with workflow related to Cityworks is guided interaction. And this is all about reducing the end user's application complexity. Now, when I was out speaking with customers and people using Cityworks, what I found over and over and over again is simplifying the end user's experience is the single greatest need that I heard about, but there's a caveat. As long as that simple interface matches your organization's business processes. It's not enough just to have a simple interface. That simple interface needs to conform itself to the way you do your work. And that is one of the strengths of Geocortex workflow together with Cityworks. So here's a quick example about completing a work order in the field. So maybe just recording the fact that it's time for someone back in the office to review and close this. So again, which work order am I interested in? I've got one that's the closest up at the top, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'm going to attach a photo to it. It's guiding me through this process, entering my labor, recording that, seeing a summary that says, this is my labor, this is the equipment used, here's my comments, and then being able to simply click that close or complete work order button in the bottom right-hand corner. Now compare this with a simple large screen with a whole bunch of fields, some of which I need to interact with and some of which I don't. This is a much preferable user experience, and you can tailor this to your specific organizational processes. So that is an example of guided interaction. Another thing we talk about workflow, and again in the context of Cityworks, is automation. And this is all about evaluating business rules and reducing complexity for users at the same time. And again, as I'm out speaking with folks, balancing quality data entry, which is so important, and keeping end users happy and productive, this is a challenge that almost every organization I speak with has. So how do you go about doing that? Well, here's an example. Workflow is automation. So we're going to do a water meter installation. In a happy path, I enter my meter number, says it's having a look, says everything's good, and I'm good to go. Okay? Nice, simple, clean, clear, easy user interaction. But what's actually happening behind the scenes is driven by a workflow. So you can see as we go here, I'm entering a meter number. We're doing validation on that meter number. That's one point of data correction to immediately help the user know if they've miskeyed in the meter number. And here we're using formatting 2 letters, 4 numbers to do verification. Once we get the meter number right, we see that validating message again. But what's happening behind the scenes is we're going out and we're talking with our workflow to a SQL database. This is a non-spatial database somewhere else in the organization that is checking the list of deployed meters. And in this case, it's giving me an error message saying, hey, we've got a discrepancy. We actually show this meter is being installed somewhere. There's a problem. Use a different meter, and just bring this one back. We have a second SQL database that we're checking, which is inventory. Is this particular meter number properly registered in our list of meters in our inventory? If it's not, we don't know where it came from. And again, you shouldn't use it. Use a different one. Now, the end user's never even going to see these messages unless there's a problem, but we're performing all these checks behind the scene, and we're doing it automatically using workflow, and we're doing it by talking with non-spatial databases elsewhere in the organization, and that is incredibly powerful. So I'll just pause there. You can probably see examples from your own organization of the kinds of checks that you could do. And then workflow is systems integration, being able to bring together data from multiple systems into a single interface. If you've ever tried to build this, you know that gathering this information from multiple places, presenting it, and then selectively doing updates, it is pretty challenging if you don't have a good integrative framework. And Geocortex workflow can be for you that particular framework. So I want to show you an example. This is an example of integration with a customer care and billing system that I did as a mock-up for a customer. I don't have access to their live application. And it was also an example of simplifying. So I have one item, which is view my work orders. Now, the important part here is at the top. I'm pulling information from the top line, from the Cityworks system, what's the work order number and what is the task. And from the second line, I'm pulling it from the customer care and billing system, what's the service point, who is the user, what is the address. So I'm ready to perform work on this. For this particular customer, it was very important to maintain both of those links and that information all the way through. So you'll see it stays at the top of the screen. And we've given a task-based application for a particular field crew, all about the tasks that they do. In this case, we're going to install a meter. We get a number of fields. Some of these fields, again, are coming from a customer care and billing system. Some of them are coming from Cityworks. We're going to populate those fields and then ultimately mark this complete. And when we do that, some of those fields are being written to both systems. Some are being written only to the Cityworks system. Some are being written to the customer care and billing. So that's an example of a systems integration approach using Cityworks and using Geocortex workflow to pull data from multiple systems. And then I mark that complete and it disappears from my list of work orders. I'm very near the end. I wanted to quickly walk you through a few more recent examples that people have done with this extension. So the one that I just showed you, which is from Michigan, United States, was an example of integration and guided interaction. It was Oracle Customer Care and Billing and Cityworks working together. So I just walked you through that example. Another recent example was from British Columbia, Canada, and this was all about simplifying business processes and automation and really conforming. And so they had an existing process in their organization about building maintenance requests. And they wanted, because they had begun using Cityworks within their organization, to track those maintenance requests as work orders that would be dispatched and people would go out and do the work. But they had an existing form, that had existing fields, and existing nomenclature around these building maintenance requests. And so they built a Cityworks extension application using Geocortex with Cityworks on the back end that mirrored their existing business process exactly. In fact, they did such a good job that at one point I got a very puzzled call from someone at Cityworks saying, what on earth is a building maintenance request? Because we had changed the vocabulary in our application to match their application. I said, no, it's just a work order, and then we were good and we could proceed from there. And the final example is from South Carolina, United States, and this was all about use-targeted applications. This particular customer had several applications already in use by the public. They had a parks application, for example, and a traffic maintenance streets application that were very frequently used within their particular jurisdiction. And so what they did actually was they integrated a task within those existing applications to allow customers to report problems filtered down only to those problems that applied to parks in the one application and that applied to streets in the other application. In the back end, all those service requests were going to a common place for triage and assignment, but from the end user's point of view, they saw simply a new feature within an existing application. So those are three recent examples. Whew, thank you for sticking with me. I know that's a ton, and of course you will have access to this recording. I'm going to have a quick look at my list of questions to see what's come in. Let's have a look here. All right, I have one question here. Really, the question is about utilizing existing systems. So if I'm already a Cityworks customer, I've already got my work orders, probably my templates, pre-populations, maybe the custom fields set up or my service requests. Can I take advantage of those things using the Cityworks extension? The answer to that is yes. We pull this information dynamically on the fly coming from the Cityworks platform. So as you make changes to, say, your work order templates, those changes are going to be immediately reflected in the application that you built with Geocortex Essentials. A good question here, thank you for asking it. Do we support Cityworks PLL, permit, land, and licensing? Darn it, I forgot. The answer is no, not currently. When we first built the Cityworks extension for the asset management systems, there were no APIs yet available for PLL. Those are out now, and I'm sure we'll have a look at them, but we do not currently support that. Does it run in disconnected mode is a fantastic question. The answer to that, unfortunately, is no. The immediate need for our customers was a custom interfaces on top of applications for simplification. And so we used our Geocortex workflow technology to accomplish that, which is right now inherently a connected technology. We may look at some point in the future at offering that, but it really is an outstanding question. As far as I know, the only solution for disconnected use in the field currently are Cityworks native apps. The latest version of Cityworks that we support is the latest version of Cityworks. The Cityworks extension goes all the way back to 2013 R2 and all the way up to the most recent version 15.2.2. Don't remember what was just released. So yes, we support all the way up to the latest. New field. Great question here. When you create a new field like the reactive field, does the field get created in Cityworks and the connected GIS? The way it works behind the scenes is we built the extension so that any existing field in the Cityworks API, you could add to your form, and simply by using the correct naming, it will automatically pick that field up and submit it to the correct endpoint in the Cityworks API. So it's relatively straightforward to make those connections, and we've given you some documentation and some examples on how to do that. It's not done in the connected GIS because the fields you're creating are not on the geospatial assets that are stored in the Esri ArcGIS platform. They are rather stored in the Cityworks platform as part of the work order, the service request, or the inspection. All right, I recognize I am a couple of minutes over. Thank you everyone for your attention. You can see my contact information up on the screen, and if you have further questions, I would be absolutely delighted to answer them for you and to give you further examples and allow you to explore what is possible when you combine the Cityworks extension for Geocortex Essentials and the Cityworks platform together to get work done. Thank you, everyone, and have an excellent day.